Today, we will be discussing a topic that really shook U.S. history. It began with a break-in and ended with the only resignation of a U.S. president in history. On June 17, 1972, 5 men are arrested for breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate complex. At first, it seems like a botched robbery, but soon reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post uncovered something bigger: connections between the burglars and President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign. What followed was a cover-up, authorized at the highest level. When investigators discovered Nixon had secretly recorded conversations in the Oval Office, the truth began to unravel. Facing mounting evidence, public outrage, and the threat of impeachment, Nixon finally gave in and resigned as the President of the United States. Vice President Gerald Ford took over office and soon after issued full pardons. What better way to fully examine this dramatic time in history than to look at some newspaper articles from then? The first article we will look at was published on June 21st, 1972 in The Guardian by Adam Raphael, entitled, "Republican Group is Sued for $1 million in Bugging Scandal." Just 4 days after the event, the burglary had not been directly tied to the president's office, but it was definitely being hinted at. The article stated, "The Democratic National Committee filed a $1 million damage suit against the Republican Committee to re-elect the president as the waves of the bugging scandal lapped dangerously close to the White House." The article goes on to discuss the White House's denial of any part of this third-rate burglary attempt, according to the White House. So, let's look at the next article. Fast forward 2 years. July 12, 1974. Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward published an article in the Washington Post titled, "President Nixon's Words." Bernstein and Woodward would be the major whistleblowers that ultimately caused the final downfall of Nixon. In the article, they talked about how Nixon only turned in partial recordings that were done in his office regarding this case, and how he discussed ways in the Oval Office to cover up what had happened and his connection to it. Ironically enough, Nixon had these recorders installed in the Oval Office in 1971 to protect himself, but ultimately they led to his fall. Then August 9, 1974, President Nixon resigned from office to avoid likely impeachment, becoming the first U.S. president to do so. Hundreds of articles are available on this date, but we're going to look at the one titled "The Nixon Resignation," which was published in the New York Times on the day of his resignation. The article discusses all the potential Nixon had with his expertise in foreign affairs, his great speaking abilities, but his eventual downfall due to a sway in his moral compass. Additionally, the article focused on how the American people should be proud of how our government showed its effectiveness to bring even leaders to justice when needed. The Watergate Scandal is an excellent example of how newspapers can be used to track historical events from a primary source.